Let me just start off real quickly by telling y'all I'm not a talking head. And I really don't like these presentations that starts and just talks and talks and talks and talks. So y'all have to interrupt me all through it. And if you don't, I'll make sure that you make this interactive. I have lots of little tricks up my sleeve. I'm an old woman who've learned through the years that you're a biggest part of my presentations, okay? I'll also tell you that I went to work in the criminal justice field at age 12 because my dad was an attorney. So I've been in this business all the way from being a legal secretary, a victim of a crime at the age of 35, had to go back to college, became a forensic psychologist, and worked in an all-male psychiatric prison, being a woman in a wheelchair. Best job I ever had in my life. From there, I saw so many things happening in the system and knew that I couldn't change things at the grassroots level. You know, the grassroots people know what the problems are. You know how to fix them, but you don't have the power to do it. So I had to move to Austin, where in Texas, that's where the power is, and start changing laws. I will tell you this. Having been in the criminal justice system and having been a psychologist in the all-male psychiatric prison, my guys weren't in there for singing too loud in the choir, okay? They were there because a lot of them were bad guys. And so all you warm and fuzzy people have to realize that there's some real truth in the criminal justice attitude of rough, tough, and ready. And so when we talk about those two, and I talk about social service providers and caseworkers and, you know, your social workers, I always say warm and fuzzies. When I'm talking about the criminal justice people, rough, tough, and ready. And there's a China wall there between the two. And y'all are tearing that wall down. And that's what coalition ends up being all about, where there's no wall whatsoever. Let me start off by, and everybody saw the statistics on reentry, but I want everybody to stand up for a minute. Okay, I want y'all to know every one of y'all are in the Louisiana Department of Corrections. You have all been convicted of a crime and you're in prison, okay? Now, I want everybody to sit down except for you back there. You want to raise your hand? Okay, and you right here. Everybody else sit down. These were the only two really bad guys. The rest of y'all all came home. Now, we can see all kinds of, thank y'all, we can see all kind of figures and data and all that stuff, but until you see how many really came home as opposed to how many stayed standing up, you really don't realize what reentry is all about and how important reentry is. It's not just to give a second chance. It's not even just to give a fresh start, which is what my vision is, okay? What it really is to save taxpayer money. When you get to the bottom line, that's the only thing you're going to be able to sell. And for years, we've come in and tried to say, you know, we need to give these people another chance and da-da-da-da-da, and you're just talking to a wall. But as soon as you say successful reentry makes our communities safer and cost us less money, that's a lot more palatable than just saying we want to give this guy a second chance. So start learning how to communicate, to sell, to market your product. Because people, as much as I would love to think we all had a passionate heart and very empathetic, the bottom line is most people you talk to feel safer with that man or that woman behind bars than in the community, okay? So what we're teaching is they're getting out whether you like it or not. So why not let them get out and make your community safer because they have changed their life? And I'm talking to the choir here, and I realize that. But it's something that I just think we need to be reminded of, okay? Okay, I want to know who all's here. Let's start with those two sides of the China wall. Who all, raise your hand if you're related to anything in the social service, the warm and fuzzy side. Okay. How many of you related to the criminal justice side? Oh, this is great. Okay, we're going to make fruit salad. Do I have the fruit salad bag? What do I do with the fruit salad bag? Oh, it's on my back. This is my husband that reminds me of where my fruit salad stuff is. Okay. Satsuma. Satsuma. Can you come be my Satsuma? Oh, yeah, you're the lucky one. Now, if she were to peel this Satsuma, we all know what it would look like. You don't have to peel it, really.
I can.
You can if you want to. If she peeled that, we'd have nice, great, non-seeds, juicy. Is it a fruit salad? No. Okay, so we need an apple. We have an apple right there. Okay, now we've got an apple and a Satsuma. Do we have fruit salad? No. Ready? Do you catch? Oh, I hit her in the head. I asked if you could catch. I can't pitch. Okay. Now we have plum. Hey, we're getting closer to a fruit salad, aren't we? You know what? Nothing better in fruit salad than bananas. In fact, fruit salads need more than the other fruit. The bananas just make it special, okay? Right there. Can you come be the bananas? Yeah. People say, are you sure it's me? And if it'd really been somebody else, I'd have said, yeah, it's you. Come on. Okay, we're nearly there, y'all. Because once we add all these things, we've really made a fruit salad. And the truth of it is, if you've ever had real fruit salad, not the kind you buy at the grocery store, but make it yourself, what you discover is that even though you have the taste of the one thing you've got in the spoon, you really have the flavor of the whole salad. And the one thing by itself isn't near as good. They're all good. Every single one of these fruits are good, all by themselves. But how much better they are when they're added together. And y'all can even take your fruit home. That's what a round table is. Now, I think y'all are calling it a coalition, okay? And I'm not saying that's a bad word. I don't come visiting in my favorite state besides Texas and insult you. But you know what? Usually I start presentations by saying, I don't believe in collaboration. And everybody's going, oh my gosh. Because collaborators sit across the table from each other. Partners sit side by side. So even though you're going to call it a collaboration, you think of it as a partnership, okay? Let's pull the fruit salad over to what I see, and I call it a round table, and please excuse me, I'll try to start remembering to say coalition. No, I'll say round table, because that really describes it better, I think. What a round table is, how it's like the fruit is, a true round table is representative of every entity that cares or that has an interest in your subject, okay? Now, the first thing I will say about developing a round table is it has to start in the community, okay? Once you've established your round table, you've got to have community input before that round table should do anything. Let me start by saying what my vision for Louisiana would be, because I've visited with a lot of your people a lot, and y'all have really got some good things going. You've already got some legislation passed, even though it's not being implemented. And so I discovered today y'all are like Texas. We get the legislators to make a law, and then they might get a crumb or two toward the law. Then you have to go back to the legislatures, and they have to make new law to implement the law they made the last season. The difference is we don't let our guys get together but every other year. I mean, they're dangerous enough coming every other year. You know, y'all let them stay together all the time, so y'all are real dummies. But the bottom line is that so y'all have a good head start, because y'all do have some legislation in place. But my vision for Louisiana and what I would like to see happen, y'all have 9 parishes. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but I think y'all have got 9 regions. You've got a bunch of parishes, 64 parishes, or 65. But you've got 9 regions in the state. If each of those regions had its own round table, okay, and then you had your state round table or your state coalition, who's on that state coalition by law? I wonder if your law even says. Does your law say, David, do you know, does your law say who's on it? On your statewide council? Tell me who all's on it. I'm not people, but what their position is. Who do they represent on your statewide council? It's in the book. Somebody read it out to me, because this is really important, because I bet you they don't have all the right people there. When you look that over, do you have an ex-offender on there? There's not an ex-offender represented anywhere on your council. Whoa. Well, that's true. You know, she asked if politicians were on there. You know, she's got some real truth here. Sociopaths, okay, the three primary crimes of three primary people that become criminals, okay? A sociopath is either a criminal, or is a lawyer, or is a politician. Seriously, those are the three main occupations of a sociopath. So you're right, yeah. But I know politicians are on there, but truthfully, are there any former offenders? Are there any family members? Well, then how do we find out the reality of need? You know? So you've got this state council in place from the legislature. We've got to start making it real. We've got to figure out how do we make that where it's real and where it really gives us the input that we need for the legislature to make the laws that they need. Now, let's say you had, you know, we waved a magic wand, and now we have 9 parishes all have a round table. And each one of those parishes has one representative that sits on that state board. Now you've got the state's muckety-mucks, like the Department of Corrections exec, okay? But he'd be sitting by one of those reps that was from Monroe, okay? Or you've got the head of Health and Human Services up there, and he's sitting by a former offender. Or a dad whose son's a sex offender, was a sex offender. Or a mom whose sister was an ex-offender. And you know what? They all put on their pants the same way. They all put one leg in at a time, and they all have an equal vote. And one's opinion, one's vote is no more powerful than the next. That's what a real round table is. That's true coalition, okay? If you can't get it done at the state level, you've just got to where they're throwing y'all a few crumbs, start working on those 9 parish round tables. Because I can guarantee you, you go with a unified voice to that legislature from your 9 regions, they're going to listen. So the first thing you need to do is say, how do we establish a local, in our region, one good round table, okay? That's what I hope to do 2 things before time is up. One is to tell you how to get that group. And by the way, I'm sure some of y'all are saying, but we need money. Well, you don't. Don't need a dime for this, okay? Okay, so let's say you've got, first we want to do and say, how do we form the round table? And second, you want to say, what do we do once we formed it? What's our process going to be? And this is all, you know, Jerry's opinion, okay? But you have to look, and you can tell I'm quite old, and I'm a grandmother, and now even a great-grandmother. So I have lots of years in this. So if for no other reason, I can tell you I've seen it from every direction. I reviewed grants for the feds, have worked for the feds for many years, and so I pretty well have a pretty good scope of what makes things work and what doesn't, okay? When we had our fruit salad a while ago, I started to pick a sweet potato and put that in there because there's some people, some entities that you really don't want on your round table, and they can spoil it. Wouldn't a sweet potato taste terrible in that fruit salad? Okay, so remember that too. Okay, so let's look and first say, how do we form a round table? You know, and let's look at it from the region viewpoint as opposed to the state level, okay? Just for starters, because you'll be able to assimilate it then. You'll be able to transfer what I'm telling you about the state, the region level, be able to transfer to that over to the state level. So let's say you don't have one at all, or even let's say that that you're fortunate enough to have one here in Baton Rouge, which I think you do. But let's go on and start it, and we say, okay, number one, where's it going to be located? Now, I can tell you, y'all are very fortunate in Baton Rouge because what Woods told me earlier is that they have your own office here already. So you're not under anybody. If you're in a region that is not Baton Rouge, that doesn't have a round table at all, the one thing I can tell you is don't get in anybody's office. In other words, you don't want to be in your parish commissioner. What do y'all call your parish commissioners? Okay, you don't want it in one of their offices. You don't want in any agency's office because whether you like it or not, it gives them power. And whether you like it or not, it gives them more weight. It makes their vote stronger. You're dependent on them. I don't care if you have to get somebody to say, I'll do this from my home and we'll meet up at such and such church, okay? But keep yourself where everybody stays equal all the time, okay? And you can't do it, if you're in somebody's office using their electricity and their computers and all that stuff, okay? You want their support and you want them on your round table, but you don't want their office, okay? Okay, so first you find, we're going to hold our meetings here, Typically, I think you should hold them in the daytime. You say, yeah, but we work. Well, yeah, but what do? You probably work in the field of criminal justice or social services. You're getting paid a salary. So how many meetings do y'all go? Who goes to at least one meeting a week? Yeah, everybody in the room. Now start going to 2. You don't get paid extra to go to that meeting you go to right now. You don't need to get paid to go extra to the meeting for a round table. So cost-wise, even though you're there as a professional or as just an advocate, you're not getting paid. That's just part of your job, which is part of every job, all of y'all's job anywhere. You wouldn't be at this conference, right? So you meet once a month, and who do we select, okay? You always want to get somebody from the university, any university. I don't care who, but those are the guys that can press the button to get research, pull data, all those boring things that you had to do if you had to take statistics or research and design in college. So you want to get one university, one academia. Now, I hope there's not any in the room because I'm getting ready to say something tacky. They're real boring usually, but that's okay because they're needed, okay? Now, who would think we need somebody in education on a criminal justice, on a reentry roundtable? But if you're going to go after grants, or you're going to go after money, or you're going to go talk to the legislature, you got to have the research behind you. You got to know what the evidence-based practices are, not best practices. Best practices is out the window. Everything now is evidence-based. So you need that research, that person that can get his sociology team or his master-level social workers to do that for a semester, okay, to do your research. So you want one academia. You definitely need to have a judge, the one that spoke here early today, one that has that down-to-earth grassroots common sense, okay? You need a judge. I don't recommend you go into juvenile yet. You need to establish your roundtables really strong for the adult population because the juvenile world is totally different. Even though they're both justice, juvenile justice, criminal justice, the systems, the process, the laws are so totally different that you're really mixing, some bad things, getting things confused. So start your coalitions with just your adult population, or that's my suggestion. But you do want to you've got to get a judge in there somewhere, okay? Now, you've got this judge, and then, okay, you have a judge and an academic. What about somebody that works at the jail? Not just somebody, but somebody that has pull. Because here's the bottom line. You have got to have the people on your round table that can make decisions. Don't let people vote by proxy. Either they're there or they lose their vote, okay? Because if you do by proxy, they're going to send some mid-management or lower level worker that can't make a decision. So you've got to have muckety-mucks. Your planning council has got to be muckety-mucks, okay? Your everyday advocates, grassroots workers, they come at a different level in your coalition. And that's probably what I should explain first. You have everything that your roundtable does should start at the community level, like I told you a while ago, okay? By that, I say you have one big community forum. When you go back to your region, figure out a way to have a community forum and just get input from people. What do we need in our region? what are the needs of the people coming out of prison and out of jail back into our communities? You get their opinions, you get the community input, and that then goes to your first level of your coalition, and that's the committee level, okay? This is the level that has your social workers, advocates, anybody that social service providers are all on your committees. So you say, what kind of committees, Jerry? Well, you decide that. You take ownership. You let your people decide. I would say what you're probably going to find is you're going to need an evidence-based practice committee, okay? That's one that write the grants and do, or they don't have to write grants, but they do all the research for you. You're probably going to have a social service committee, which we call supports committee, which can do things like housing, employment, like, all of those things that we know are barriers for people coming out. So that's another committee, is your support services committee. Okay, so now we've got evidence-based practice, support services. How about policy reform? Now, when I say policy reform, I don't just mean with the legislature. Think about it. Your parishes have policy that needs changing. Your jails have policies that need changing. So policy reform committee can work at every level of your government, from the jail to the prison, all the way up. So policy reform committee is usually a standing committee. And you can keep breaking it down. This year before last, we established an ex-offenders council, which is one of our standing committees. Most valuable thing I've ever done in my career was to help establish that, because we get the real meat. When my panel goes to do presentations at large national conferences, I will tell people we will have question and answers, but let me warn you, don't ask the question if you don't want to hear the real answer, because that ex-offenders council will tell you exactly what the truth is. Yeah, that might be in law, that might be what you say you do, but you really don't do it. And then they will not stop at that. They will go to telling you how you really didn't do it and how it really should have been done, and you end up being so shrunk down in your seat that you wish you'd never asked the question. But they're valuable. There's nothing more powerful than a former offender that now has their master's degree that's standing up before the legislature saying, I was given not only a second chance, but a fresh start. Okay? So, and so that's a really important committee of your group. Now, so after you've got the committee level, your next level, now we're talking muckety-mucks, okay? That's the planning council. That's your upper level that are the decision makers. And that's why I call them muckety-mucks. And I'm sure there's probably a judge or somebody in the room that is a muckety-muck, but I won't make you identify yourself. But those are the decision makers, okay? But not only do they make up your planning council, but so does every committee chair, okay? So your policy reform committee, they're on the planning council. Your support systems committee, they're on the planning council. Your ex-offenders council member is on the planning council. Now, I would advise, even beyond that, once you've established your planning council, you may want to add a family member, not just a former offender, but also a family member, because the needs of the family are significantly different than the needs of the former offender, okay? So having a family member and a former offender is great. You also want one service provider, okay? So whether it's Goodwill or whether it's your workforce commission, or it's just somebody that provides services in the community. Now, it's real important, and this is kind of getting into the weeds, and I probably shouldn't even go there, but you really don't want that service provider to be able to serve a long period of time. You have certain positions that are agency positions that you need on your round table, like a judge and, the academia and this and this and that. You have certain people that would stay there because you need them there. Somebody representing your jail and that kind of, or high enough person to represent your jail and that. They stay there. But your other slots for your planning council, like your former offender, the family member, the service provider, those need to rotate off every 2 years. Because, and not to step on toes, but invariably you're going to have your your service providers fighting, and pushing, and it's just natural. You don't do it intentionally or hateful or anything like that. It's just that you're in this organization that you know is good, and you want everybody else to know that you're better than the other service provider. And so you got to rotate it out so that everybody gets a chance and gets to have input, okay? Okay, so now you've got, let's go over it. The community started it and tells you what to do, what the needs are. That information then goes to the appropriate committee. The committee decides then, and every level takes ownership. The committee says, okay, here's what we want to do for the next year. We want to look at permanent supported housing. That's one of our goals for this next year. And another one of our goals is to hold a community forum or to go to resource fairs so that we can spread the word on what reentry is. In other words, each committee decides what they need to do based on what the community told them was needed, okay? And then those committees, when they set out their action plan for the year, that goes up then to the planning council, because once you've been able to do these things, now the planning council has to make the decision to make those things happen, because they're the muckety mucks. They're the ones that have the power to make things like that happen, okay? Now, what does this cost? Nada. Unless you hire an executive director for your roundtable, which you don't have to do. You'd be amazed how many retired social workers there are out there, or retired teachers, or retired law officers. I mean, there's plenty of people out. How many young people that you can get that really aren't too interested? They can get independent studies from their college, and they'll work all year for you for nothing. You know, a roundtable really doesn't cost anything. Now, if you do write a grant, you get your evidence-based practice committee to write a grant, and you get a grant, you know, for your coalition or your roundtable, then hire you an executive director. You know, but you don't have to have one to start with. You don't have to have a dime. Now, there's one thing that I do want to throw in here about your ex-offenders and your family members. You have to be very careful. You know, the muckety mucks can come any time of the day. And committee members, if they're, you know, work for this company or that agency or whatever, they can come any time of the day. But your ex-offenders and your family members, they work a job that has nothing to do with reentry. So if you develop an ex-offenders council, then you make those meetings at night, in the evening. We always started at 5:30. We had meet and greet, which meant I brought pizza. We had one man donate pizza for a year. So we had meet and greet at 5:30. Meeting started at 6 and ran till 8, once a month. That was the ex-offenders council, okay? But the other meetings are in the daytime, because you're not going to get, you know, this social worker that works hard, you're not going to get her to come after work. She's already put in an 8-hour day. You can't expect her to put another hour or two in on her. And if any of y'all in here are in reentry in some shape, form, or fashion, and you just go to this meeting like you would any other meeting. Does that make sense? Okay, now let's do one more thing. Who's the very back person against the wall? Yeah, you're looking behind you, hoping somebody's behind you, and they're not. You're back there. Yep. Here you come. No, it's you. And you're so busy laughing at her, you can come too. Okay, I want y'all to go over to that wall way over there. And you're probably going to need to put all of the stuff you've got in your hand. There you go. Okay, I want y'all to stand pretty close. I want you to reach up on that wall as high as you can reach. Significant. Okay, lady, what is your name? Deborah. And what's your name? Okay, Deborah, I want you to get higher than JP. That was a poor excuse for a jump. Let's try that again, Deborah. Okay, y'all, she can't make it. Deborah, you're mandated to get higher than JP. Okay, somebody's saying pull his arm down. There you go. Pull his arm down, Jack. Come on, Deborah. There. Oh. Well, she got it down. But that's cheating. What else can Deborah do? Somebody said get a chair. Well, then get it. Yeah. Those aren't chairs. These are chairs up here. Is that a chair? Oh, yeah, there you go. Oh, I'll take the liability. Come on, Deborah, climb up there. There you go. Hey, look. Okay, wait, don't go down, Deborah. You're not through. Okay, JP, she just got higher than you. What are you going to do? Oh, no. No. All by yourself, JP. Oh, okay. All right, that's good enough. She already beat you anyway. You can't duplicate her. What happened when she first got up there and he was higher? She just kind of gave up. And then somebody said, pull his arm down. Didn't they? She tried that. Somebody else said, get a chair. Golly, look what happens when we all work together for something. Look how she could accomplish something that seemed impossible to her. Just because y'all were here to give her advice. And just because JP was there to go get her chair. And just because I was here to make her keep going. That's what a round table's all about. That's why everybody is so important, to come from their direction. Does that make sense? Cool. All right, let me see what else mischief I could come up with. I'm not gonna do that. Yesterday, my daughter sent me a thing that said, this looks like my guardian angel. And there was a guardian angel just sitting there shaking. I got to thinking, Raquel, that's not just you, that's your mother too. Let me ask y'all something. It all sounds pie in the sky and wonderful, but how difficult, who's not from Baton Rouge? Somebody raise their hand that's not from Baton Rouge. Right here. How difficult is it going to be for you to go back to your region and talk to some people that really need to be involved in this? It's not going to be difficult? Cool. What about you? Not at all. Okay, so start forming your round table, your planning council first. That's the muckety mucks, okay? Because you got to make sure they're on board. And they've got big egos. So you want to make sure that they know that you came to them first, okay? Even though they're not the most important, really. But you don't tell them that, okay? So you get them started. Remember, you're marketing a product. And what is the product? Promoting public safety and saving tax dollars, right? That's what you're marketing. Giving people a second chance is just icing on the cake, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, so 2 different regions here, so it's not going to be a big problem. For those of you that think it might be, because some of y'all may have some old fogies in your little county, especially if you're in the rural area. If they're anything like Texas, man, our little rural counties are tough. They believe in lock them up and throw away the keys. And about the only way to get to them is similar to what the man earlier was talking about, is how much money you save, how much money you're spending. We did a research 3 years ago on housing and on the jail and how many people were homeless that were in the jail. And we discovered that for what we were paying for them to have been in jail, we could have built each one of those homeless former offenders a $140,000 house. Now, something I haven't heard much today that I think y'all need to keep in mind. One person that you need to put on your planning council is someone from your mental health authority. Because although I haven't heard it too much today, about 40 to 45% of your jail and prison population, particularly your jail population, are going to have a form of mental illness. Okay? So you've got to have somebody on your planning council that's from your mental health authority. Now remember, when you're developing the council, it's got to be somebody that's high enough up the food chain that they can make the decisions. And they only meet once a month, and it's not going to kill their hide. And if your people are like they are in Texas, and I'm sure they are, once one finds out that somebody else is on that planning council, then all of a sudden this one has to be on it, and that you won't have any trouble. Once you get those first one or two muckety mucks, the other muckety mucks will join in because they don't want to be left out. A lot of government agencies are represented. Your DA's office, your district attorney's office needs to be represented. Your county attorney's office needs to be represented. And let me give all of y'all my email address. And because my handouts that I had didn't go through, and so y'all don't have them. So if y'all will email me, then I'll send you some information, okay, and kind of to help you get started. And you can always pick up the phone, or you can always holler. I love excuses to come to Louisiana, okay? So I just enjoyed myself tremendously the last few days. So as you start going through this, you're going to run into some things that I probably can help you hurdles to jump over that you won't have to worry about. While you're doing this, I really think that we need to talk to David because he's been mandated with doing something about the statewide coalition. Oh, my email. Jeri, all lower. I'm short. JeriJeanW@gmail.com. 512. JeriJeanW@gmail.com. And the phone is 512-662-2005. That do it? Okay. All right. So while we're forming these regional roundtables, and we already have in law established a state coalition, okay, we need to look at the state coalition and say, what's wrong with it, okay? I can tell you right now what's wrong with it. One of the things is it doesn't have the right people on it. Or it might have the right people, it just needs some more right people. It's probably more, and that's probably, David, a lot more palatable. We want to add some people to, we need to add some people to this to make it more viable, okay? Another thing that has hurt is because they can send somebody, and that's a big no-no. That's something that we're going to need, when we start looking at policy and procedure. And like I say, you get these regionals set up, they're not going to have a whole lot of choice. They're not going to be able to ignore you as easy. They can ignore this one or that one, And see, we've got an ally here with David since he's been mandated, because now what we can do, we can go to David and say, okay, we're getting ours set up here. And then David can report out, they're saying that we really need to change this about that we need to really start meeting, the statewide coalition needs to start meeting more, or they need this, because the regional roundtables are calling me. See, so it gives him a reason to go to them to try to make it right. Does that help? David, will that work? Will that make it easier for you? Yeah? I mean, having this man in your arena is just huge. And y'all are huge for him. Because I bet nobody's really listening much to him right now. But I'll tell you what, if there were 9 regions, representatives talking to him, I guarantee they'd be listening to what he has to say. David, what's your last name? Pressy. He's going to speak at 4. He's going to be speaking at 4 or 4:15, somewhere around there. Okay, but this is somebody y'all need and that needs you. Just like JP and Deborah. Okay? Just think of it that way. Okay, let me have some questions. Oh, I just covered everything, right? No. Okay.
I'm sorry. I apologize. You're just phenomenal. But my question is, we just came out of an election where every judge and his brother was running. And I'm not saying that in a disparaging way, but I guess my concern is when they are running for election, being on a planning council may actually be used against them. So just how you got people to still volunteer in that.
Yeah, she's absolutely right. When you go to run for office, your opponent automatically says, oh, he's soft on crime. He did this, this, and this. The bottom line is, you show him how much money that planning council is going to save that county, so that when he does run for office, he can save. I saved $1.4 million because we were able to pre-sentence people, or we were able to send people through community court as opposed to keeping them in jail for 90 days. Or we were able to collaborate with Salvation Army and Goodwill, and so the men that would have been drawing down, welfare checks are instead all working. And that's what your policy, that's what your evidence-based practice committee, that's your academics. Those are the figures and the data they have, so that politician does have something to back him up to say, I made your community safer and I saved you money. Not soft on crime, I'm hard on safety. Yeah.
I can understand the wisdom of choosing, because you choose people with a category that they're working on or have it in mind. And when you go to choosing your friend, it never works out. And I can understand that. You taught me something. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I learn something every day. Thank goodness. Any other questions?
I'm sorry. I understand you have your committee level, and then you have your committee level, then you have your planning council. Where does the coalition fall with that?
The coalition is the round table. That's all of it. Yeah, the coalition is everything from that community forum where you got the input all the way through. The difference is, what it looks like is this. It starts with the community. That's your foundation. It goes to your committees. That's the first step up the ladder. The next step is your planning council, because that's muckety-mucks that change the law. And then guess what? Because they just changed policy and procedure or changed law, now it's back to the community for enforcement. So it's a never-ending cycle, okay, that breaks the cycle. Once a month. He's asking about how often they meet. Committees meet once a month, and the planning council meets once a month. So if you are a committee chair, you would actually be meeting twice a month, because you'd be over your committee and you'd be in the planning council.
And then the planning council, they're working primarily to plan projects and the meetings agenda? No,
the planning council is getting all their information from the committees. The committees do all the work, okay?
Right.
What the committees, let's give you an example. Let's say Policy Reform Committee discovered that that the county and the city were saying that they were supporting you getting employment for former offenders. But then you look, and the first one of the questions on their initial application says, do you have a criminal background? So right off the bat, they are putting up a barrier, but they're expecting Joe Private small business over here to not. So Policy Reform Committee says, we've done the research. We need to show the city council and the, what we call county, we all call parish.
Right.
Your parish, what are they, commissions? What
Police jurors. Police jurors.
Oh, police jurors, I keep forgetting that.
That's right.
We need them to take that out, to ban that box, take it off their initial application. They can move it on down to jobs that would need to have that security. But for the initial application, you don't need to ask. And so now you're up to the planning council and say, well, I'm on the city council, so I certainly can present to the city council that opportunity that we no longer have, that we take that off the initial application. So it all came from the community saying, my son can't get a job, or I've been out and I've had 52 interviews and I still hadn't gotten a job. It went from that input to the committee that was called Support Services, that particular year was looking at employment, right, and discovered that the parish and the city were not hiring, or had that block up there saying, do you have a criminal background? And then it went to the planning council, who could really change that policy.
So the agenda for your monthly meeting of the entire coalition, what does that look like?
Okay.
Is it reports?
The monthly meeting is the planning council. Anybody can come, but the only voting members are the planning council. And what they have, you have your opening, You know, everybody introduces that same old boring stuff where everybody introduced themselves. Nobody remembers when they walk out the door who anybody was, you know, that was out in the audience. But anyway, they have that, and then each committee reports out what their committee has done that month and is doing for the next month. Because what happens a lot of times is that committee will come out, one committee will come up, let's say support services will come up and they'll say, you know, we're really having trouble because Goodwill is doing such and such and such. And so we're working with them right now. Well, somebody on that planning council can say, well, let me give them a call. Because you know what? That muckety-muck they're listened to. Or you can say, I've been trying to call Goodwill for, 2 weeks. Our committee's been trying to get a hold of them to find out what their assessments look like. So they report out where their committee is. The key to all this is ownership. Those committees have to take ownership. They're getting their input from the community. So you don't want the planning council telling the committees what to do, because the committees are getting the need from the people. And so the committee decides themselves who their chair is, and they decide what they're going to do for that year. I call it an action plan, a yearly action plan. And they decide for that year what they're going to do. And usually it's 2 or 3 things that they're going to look at. Sometimes it's just research and get data on something, like if it's evidence-based practice. A lot of times you'll have support systems committee and they're going to need research to do something they're wanting. What happens? That chair calls the evidence-based practice committee chair and say, can your people get us data on this, this, and this? How much more coalition can you add? I mean, that's real collaboration, But the committees are specialties. Those are specialized people that have a passion in that arena. And those committees come from the community.
Do you ever use those coalition meetings for education, have special speakers come in, those kind of things?
Absolutely.
So it's not just action or reports, but it's also orientation, education.
Right. And a lot of times the planning council, because those members are real busy people, we usually just have about an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half. Then we have a presentation after that they can either stay or not stay. So you might have a new service provider in the area that got a new grant.
Okay.
And you may think, okay, that's something the council really needs to hear about. And so that at the bottom, you'll show adjourn, and then after that, you'll show presentation by, back to life.
Right.
And so that they can stay if they want to hear that presentation. But if they've got to get back to court, then they can leave.
So the coalition, the length of the coalition meeting would be how long? Ideally?
About an hour to an hour and a half.
Okay.
We try to do it pretty down and dirty because, like I say, these are pretty busy people.
Yeah. And you usually do it around lunchtime? That's what
Yeah, we always do it around lunchtime.
Okay, all right.
And we don't buy their lunch. They can bring a sack lunch if they want to, but we don't buy. But the main thing is you got to let them decide. You can say, okay, for these first couple of meetings, we're going to try it right at noon because that's easier for. But then you let them decide. Those first meetings need to be that. I'm sorry, I've got to shut up. It's time. Last question.
Sorry. Okay, you said an ex-offender committee. How many would be on this committee as an ex? Or family member. Okay, and what is your suggestions?
I'll tell you what. So let me tell you how that works. This is so cool.
I do need to know this.
Yeah, this is really cool. When we first started it, it was, former offenders and family members, social workers, anybody that wanted to come, okay? After about the second or third meeting, we decided, because we were getting a lot of social workers in there, and so all of a sudden, the former offenders were kind of getting outvoted. So I said, okay, here's our problem, and I just put it out on the table. We've got a lot of people interested, a lot of social workers interested. Everybody's got an even vote. And so y'all are getting outnumbered. And so they said, yep, you're right. We already noticed that. And, of course, they didn't know me well enough by then until at that time to know that they should have told me the first time they realized it. But anyway, bottom line was they came back and they said, everybody's invited, everybody's input's needed, but only former offenders can vote. Okay, and you can't, as a former offender, you can't vote until you've been to 3 meetings of the ex-offenders council, because they want to make sure that they had made an investment.
So in other words, your suggestion would be that they would have to come to 3 ex-offender committee
Council meetings, yeah.
Council meetings. Okay. And then how would you go about their voices really being heard?
Because they are one of the standing committees for the planning council. So what happens whenever support systems is going to a resource fair, they'll call the ex-offenders council and say, do one of y'all want to go with me to the resource fair? Or if the policy reform is going to talk to the legislature, guess who they get to come testify? They team tag. Almost
So it's
all.
up to the other committees to
They
invite
turn to the other committees. Exactly.
ex-offenders.
Exactly.
Okay.
So whenever they're going to testify, let's say just like that with the ban in the box for the city, they got 2 former offenders to go with them that gave that personal story, one from a father and one from a woman that was a former offender. They gave the data, and then the former offender gave the story, and the parent gave the love story.
Awesome.
Okay.
Coming down. Coming down.
Thank you.
Basically, curious, in your experience, how have you dealt with the sweet potatoes in the group? Like preventing them from coming in, or dealing with them when they actually are in and actually spoiling the whole salad?
I'm sorry, I missed all of that.
No, you were given the fruit salad. So what about the sweet potatoes? How do you keep them from coming, especially if you just start with 2 or 3?
Sweet potato. She's asking if I was going to put a sweet potato in there.
Yeah, the politics.
You know, every community has a rear end, and they always end up making their way into anything new. You need to be alert enough to spot the rear ends and get them off on a task. Okay? That's all you can do with sweet potatoes. In fact, you can smile at them and say, you know, you just remind me of a sweet potato. And then everybody on your council will know just what you're talking about.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Can we get a round of applause for the speaker? Ms. Carmelita, you gonna come on up?
Oh, wait a minute, y'all.
One more thing.
On your planning council, you do want a small business owner. And you also want somebody that is in housing, whether it's your housing authority or whatever. Okay, those are 2 standing positions you need to keep.
Federal, state, and local.
I'm Jerry, and I don't like to be a talking head, so y'all interrupt anytime, all the time, okay? I also like things real interactive, and so if you're not volunteering, I volunteer for you. I tend to get back row Baptist, and I see we have 2 back there right off the bat that haven't realized I'm talking about them yet. But let me start off just by telling you that I've been in this field for many, many, many years, as many gray hairs as I have. I started at a very young age in my teens, working in my dad's law office. Went from there to becoming a legal secretary, at which time I then became a victim of a crime and ended up in a wheelchair. I no longer could be in the law offices anymore because back then that meant disabled meant not able. And so I had to go back to college. So I did, and I went back and became a forensic psychologist. Was fortunate enough to been asked to take 2 of our Texas muckety-muck legislators to the psychiatric prison. Texas was the first state to have where they combined a prison with a hospital, and it was an all-male psychiatric prison. So while I was there with these 2 muckety-mucks, I asked the warden, I said, Warden, when I'm ready to do my internship and residency, can I do it here at Skyview? Well, of course, I knew he wasn't going to say no, not in front of these 2 politicians. And he said, well, sure, just let me know. Well, 2 weeks later, I was sitting in front of him ready for my internship. Worked in the all-male psychiatric prison and was probably my favorite job in my entire life. Never was scared. It was real interesting. But anyway, discovered at that level, and I'll tell you the story real quick because we're going to have a little more time. We don't have as big a crowd. And it's an interesting story that I think will hit home with some of y'all that work with offenders. I had a young man that came in at 16 years old to Skyview. He'd had a nervous breakdown. His name was Marcus. He was the youngest of 9 children to a migrant female Hispanic worker. Marcus did not even go to school until he was like 10 because his mother was real protective of him. And he did finally go to school, and when he was 15, some of the Caucasian kids said, Marcus, you want to go with us? We're going to go get some boom boxes and TVs. And Marcus, of course, was thrilled to be able to join the other boys. They broke into a house in the lower level of this house, and the room they broke into was a little baby's nursery, a 2-year-old little girl. The boys went on into the house. The mother was upstairs, heard the boys, and called 911. The police immediately, of course, came, sirens blaring, and the boys hollered at Marcus, stay there, Marcus, we'll be back in a minute. Of course, they took off. Marcus was there when the police got there, and they asked Marcus, did you touch that baby? And Marcus, with a great big grin, said yes. When you asked Marcus how he touched he always said it was an angel, well, how he touched the angel, you could see him with his finger pointing through the bars to be able to touch this angel because she had blonde hair, she laid on clouds. He'd never seen anything like that. Marcus was then told, if you'll make your mark on that line, then you can go home. Well, he made his mark on the confession to 13 counts of burglary and molestation of a child. He was given 40 years in the worst prison in Texas where sex offenders and child molesters were. He was raped and sodomized so many times that he had a nervous breakdown, which is what brought him to Skyview, where I was. And until he got to Skyview, nobody knew that he had a 59 IQ. He was trainable because his mother had spent so many years training him individually, but nobody had recognized that he had an intellectual developmental disability. Marcus was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for me. Grassroots people know the problems, they even know the solutions, but they don't have the power to change law. They don't have the power to change anything. And so to change anything, I knew I had to go to Austin. So I left East Texas, went to Austin, and wrote my first grant 2 months later and got it. And it was called Justice Now, and it was a project of national significance. And so I've been in this field ever since. And I tell you those stories because you need to know that I'm neither on the warm and fuzzy side, which I always say is social work and, service providers, people that really have that heart to help, nor am I on the rough, tough, and ready side, which are typically, a lot more rough, tough, and ready, and have a few in there that, lock them up and throw away the key. And there's a big China wall between those two. The East never sees the West. And what y'all are doing here in Louisiana now is starting to tear that China wall down. That's what coalitions do. That's what a roundtable does. You're going to hear me say that word reentry roundtable a lot because that's what my vision is for Louisiana. I would love to see y'all's 9 regions each have its own roundtable. And we're going to talk today about how you establish that. And from those 9 roundtables would be a unified voice that can go to what is now your statewide coalition that's not real valuable right now. I understand you have it in law, and that's great. That's a big plus that you already have it in law. The problem is that the statewide coalition is not being implemented, or at least not being implemented correctly. So if we could get roundtables in the 9 regions, think how strong you would be to get that change for your statewide coalition. Not to mention how strong you would be to go to the legislature yourselves to change law. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today primarily, okay? Let's see, we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and me is 13. So let's just say I'm not here. I need everybody to stand up just for a second. Okay. All of y'all are in prison. Every one of you have committed a crime and been convicted and gone to prison, okay? Now I need everybody to sit down except you. Everybody else sit down. What did we just see? We just saw everybody else go home. He was the only really bad guy. He's still in prison. But the rest of you went home. We can look at these stats, but they don't mean anything till you see the numbers that are coming back compared to the numbers staying in. That's why reentry beginning at arrest is so important. Reentry beginning at arrest would find your Marcuses, your guys that have things like intellectual developmental disabilities, mental health problems, those types of things. Reentry at arrest would help you to divert people that are really not a danger, okay? So there's a lot of reasons that you want reentry to begin at the beginning. I mean, have you ever tried to do anything and start in the middle? It's never as good. And reentry is no different. I need an orange. Can you come up here? You're an orange. See, you were on the back row. And I need a banana. Uh-huh. I laughed a while ago. Every time you point to somebody, they say, me? Are you sure it's me? It's not her back there? Okay, I need a pear. How about a banana? You just thought you were hiding behind him. Oh, that's two bananas. I wanted 2 bananas. We're supposed to have 2 bananas. I'll tell you why in a second. What have I left out? An apple. You're my apple. Hi. Oh, no. And you're my sweet potato. Okay, we're making a fruit salad. You know, every one of these fruit are sweet. They taste good by themselves, right? They're all important. God wouldn't have made them if they weren't. But how much better are they if we add them all together and make a fruit salad? When you pick up a piece of fruit salad in your spoon, you can taste that that's a pineapple, and you like the taste, but it's a little bit better because it's got the other fruit juice in it with it, right? But then why 2 bananas? It's because bananas taste better. They make your fruit salad better. And so you're going to have a little bit more banana than you have anything else. And then why the sweet potato? That's not a fruit. What's that sweet potato going to taste like in salad? Not too good. Not that you're not too good. All by yourself, you're real good, but you really don't need to be in our fruit salad. This is just like what we have when we have a round table. We have diverse people that are all very important and very important to their community and to what they're doing. But they're so much better when they have other fruit added to them and other organizations and agencies. But every now and then you find a sweet potato. Going to ruin the salad. How many of y'all are in a community that there's always one rear end? Oh, y'all, I'm real laid back in case y'all hadn't noticed. But there's always a rear end. And so what you got to do with that potato, with that sweet potato, is go find something else for that sweet potato to do so they don't ruin your fruit salad. Okay? Thank y'all. Y'all would have had real fruit in your hand, except I didn't think about it, and I gave away all the fruit the first session. So y'all just had to imagine yourself as being a banana. Okay, so remember me talking about that China wall, that warm and fuzzy side and that rough, tough, and ready side, and now y'all are tearing the wall down? But you know, you've got to convince everybody how to do that. That's important to do. How are you going to do that? How are you going to say, you know, this guy really needs a second chance. We really need to be, you know, how's that going to hit? Not very well. Most people would, when they think of somebody committing a crime, they think, I don't want them in my neighborhood, you know, not in my backyard. So, you know, how are you going to, you've got to market your product. What's your product? Your product is a former offender. And you got to market that, not only to the community, but also to the judges, the district attorney, you know, your sheriffs. Are y'all sheriffs called sheriffs here? Your parish sheriffs? So how do you convince them to give this guy not only a second chance, but a fresh start? Remember, they're not going to be real happy about it. But what if you were to say, you know what? If you'll work with us on reentry, it's going to promote public safety. Here's the data. This is showing that successful reentry promotes public safety. And better yet, it saves you a bunch of tax dollars. That's how you market reentry. You can't market it by saying, this guy needs another chance, or this woman wants to change her life, because nobody's going to believe you, and unfortunately, not many will care. Not that they don't care about that person, but they care about them and their families more, and you can't blame them. But if you can show them that their community is going to be safer if reentry is in place, and you can show those district attorneys and those parish politicians that they're going to save money, then you've marketed your product. So from now on, I'm not saying completely forget second chance and fresh start and all that stuff. I'm just saying that's icing on the cake. Okay? One other thing about a round table, and I think I need 2 people to go against this wall. Oh, what 2 people haven't I picked on yet? Picked on you already. I didn't pick on you. And I didn't pick on you. I need both of y'all to go over to that wall. Oh, no, the one way over there. Way over there. Yeah. Uh-huh. I want y'all pretty close to each other. Okay, I need both of y'all against the wall. But see that column? And I need you to reach as high as you can reach. Oh, what's your name? Steve? And Neba? Okay, Steve's higher, Neba. You got to get higher than Steve. Neba. Earth to Neba. It's not quite high enough, Neba. You got to get a little higher. Neba. Oh, she stood on tiptoes. That almost did it. A little more, Neba. Y'all, somebody. Is she there? Is she there? Okay, she's a little higher than you, Steve. Get higher, Steve. Oops, he's on tiptoes, Neba. Now you got a problem. You're lower. Neba, can you get higher? Neba, you can't. Can Neba get higher? Somebody said, yeah. Why? How can Neba get higher? Neba, this lady says you can get on a chair. Neba. Neba, if you got on a chair, would you be higher? Okay. Since you had her solution to her problem, you need to run fill in for her. Oh, you're taller. I bet you can get higher. Go get higher. Okay, Neba, we have a replacement. You can't go away. You still got to support him. He's filling in for you. You don't have to reach on the wall anymore, though. You can stand back and watch him. You can advise him. Okay, Steve, now you got problems. All right, let's see. Oh, Lordy. Hey, notice how Steve got higher? He got on his knees. All right. Okay. Oh, wait. That's enough. Okay. Oh, all right. Both of y'all down. Is that not cool? You know why that's cool? Neba tried and tried and tried and couldn't do it. Okay? But then she stood on her tiptoes and she stretched a little bit more and she got above him one time. Then he got higher. But then she had to realize her limitations. She couldn't do any more. We called in a replacement that beat the heck out of Steve. And Steve was on his knees. You noticed he got on his knees, but you got on your feet. So what happened? It was all accomplished because they thought of new ways to doing it. They realized when they couldn't do anymore, and y'all helped to get them to accomplish it. That's the same thing a round table does. That's what you do when you really collaborate, you know? And it's not that you're not plenty tall or you're both plenty tall. And you stand up as yourself. But when you have other people helping and you have other things to pull from, like a chair, it's amazing what all can be accomplished. Because had we just now, when y'all first came in, if I had said, can you reach, and I'd had that level on the wall, your first reaction would have been, no, I can't reach that high. When in fact, it took a chair, but he reached it, right? That's what you do when you collaborate. Let me tell you a little bit about, I've told you what my vision is for Louisiana, for each region to have a round table. So you say, okay, well, what is a round table and how do you have that? Okay. A round table is a coalition. It's a diverse coalition that educates, provides awareness, makes change, does all of those things because of the power of the partnerships. A lot of times in my presentations, I'll start out and say, I don't believe in collaboration, so that everybody's shocked into listening what else I have to say. Because the collaborators sit across the table from each other. Partners sit side by side. And so what this really is, what a roundtable really is a partnership of people that have an interest in successful reentry in order to promote public safety and reduce tax dollars. That's what a roundtable is. Y'all are calling them coalitions here, which is fine. I just keep going back to roundtable. And it may be advisable, if you decide to start one in your region, to call them a roundtable, just so it will separate that as a little different from your statewide coalition. Mm-hmm. What, coalition? Yeah. And for the same reason that I don't. And the same reason I hope that eventually they will change the name to, something besides coalition. Because it really is more of a partnership. Coalitions still tend to have silos, but they do imply that those silos are working together. Just not like sitting side by side, okay? So you say, okay, well, how do we start these? Let's say that, how many of y'all are from Baton Rouge? Just you. Okay, good. You're ahead of everybody because Baton Rouge has already started a coalition and even has offices. So for the rest of y'all, let's say you've gone home and you want to start your round table. And we're going to call it a round table just for the sake of designating the difference, okay? So you look at your county and you say, okay, I've got to get some people on board with this that are big enough muckety mucks that they're going to help me, that they're going to, help get this thing off the ground. And so one of the first things you want to do is say, okay, where are we going to, first off, who are we going to have in this coalition, on this round table? Well, let me tell you, your round table should be everybody, the whole community. And the reason I say that is because once you get set up, here's how it works. Your foundation is the community. You hold an annual forum where the community comes in and gives you input on what needs to be done, what the barriers are, okay? From that input, from that community forum, you then have committees. You have things like a support systems committee. That committee looks at things like housing, employment, family reunification, okay? You have what's called an evidence-based practice committee. That's your research nerds. That's the one that like to look up data and research and statistics. Maybe one or two in there can write grants. So you have an evidence-based practice committee. You have a policy reform committee. Now, when I say policy reform, I'm not just talking about your legislature, even though that would be part of your policy reform. I'm talking about just your local, parish. What are the rules for hiring in my parish? Does my parish hire former offenders? Well, if they don't, how are they asking the general public, the small businessman, to hire former offenders? Okay, so your support system committee really zeroes in on the supports that person needs to be successful as they come back to our community. You might have a committee, to me, the most valuable committee we ever established was an ex-offenders council. And this was men and women that have served time in jail or prison. And they came back out because they know the real stuff. They know real from unreal. Whenever we team tag, I always team tag with one of my former offenders. And I can tell you, when we start a presentation, I'll tell the audience, now when you get ready to ask a question, you better expect the answer. Be ready for it because they will tell you the truth. And I've had former offenders look right in smack dab in one of our commissioners' eyes and say, yeah, that sounds real good, but it doesn't work. Okay? So that they're kind of like a speakers bureau for you. They team tag for presentations. They go with our support systems committee to resource fairs. Y'all have all heard of peer-to-peer mentoring. It's kind of like that. You've got one of your former offenders council members that will go and literally be mentoring to the public. I can give a speech with all of my data and all that boring stuff, and they'll be interested. But the minute that former offender opens his mouth and says, you know what? I've worked with former offenders and I've worked with people that have never committed a crime. And I can promise you that former offender is not going to steal a ream of copy paper because his job's too valuable for him. You know, he's going to be there early. He'll work late. He won't be late. He'll won't be absent. You can depend on him because it was too hard for him to get that job to begin with. And I'll tell you what, that one little line will have people eating out of his hands much more than all the data that I can give them. Okay, so that Speakers Bureau, that Former Offenders Council, is to me the most valuable committee that we have. Everyone's invited to any of our and can be a part of any of our committees. They have a vote on all of our committees. Now, the Former Offenders Council is a little different. The only people that can vote, even though everybody else is invited and give input, the only voting people on that committee are former offenders. Okay, and they have to have attended at least 3 meetings before they can vote. Because you want that dedication. You want to make sure that they're there not just to get something, but to give something. So you may have a former offenders council. It doesn't matter what committees you come up with, because each parish may be a little different. Y'all may decide to, one region may decide to come up with housing as its own committee and employment as its own committee. That structure comes from y'all and your community and what you feel like is best for you. You know, you're going to give them the doll and then you're going to let them dress the doll. That's kind of what it boils down to. So you have your committees that just got input from the community. Every year they decide, they do their action plan. They say, these are the things we want to do to address employment, because that was something that came out in the community forum, okay? So the committees decide what they want to do, and then they send it up to the planning council. Now, these are your muckety-mucks, okay? These are the ones that you have to have because you want to make change. And they're the ones that are high enough on the food chain that they can make decisions. So when you set it up, your planning council members all vote, but they cannot vote by proxy. They have to be there or they don't get a vote. Now, okay, you say, who's on there? Well, you've got people that can make a change, like your district attorney, okay, your sheriff, your police department head, your mental health authority, those type of people, a small businessman, okay? So you plan your planning council with standing positions like agency people that can make a difference, and then you add other positions on that plan, other membership, like a former offender and a family member of a former offender, because they're the ones that can bring real life to it. They've got a totally different perspective than what that DA has, okay? The neat thing is that everybody on your planning council puts their pants on the same way. Everybody puts one leg in first and then the other leg, okay? So nobody is more important than the next. Nobody's input is any more significant than the guy sitting next to him. So I've got that sheriff sitting right next to the daddy of a sex offender that has an equal vote with that sheriff. And it's amazing just how the networking before those meetings and after those meetings, how all of a sudden they start seeing other perspectives because they've become friends. They've become partners. That person will come up with something and that sheriff will scratch his head and say, I never thought of that, because he never saw it from that perspective, okay? So that's your planning council. So they're the ones, and a good example would be several years ago in Travis County, which is where Austin is, both the Austin City Council and the county, Travis County, which is like y'all's parish, they both were after really pushing reentry. Man, you need to hire former offenders, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, as typical politicians, when you got to looking, what's the first thing that's on their initial application? Do you have a criminal background, yes or no? Well, if they check yes, they know it's going in the garbage. And if they don't, if they check no and the background check's running, they had it, then they're liars. So they're lost, they usually just throw their application away and don't go any further. So here we had our county and our city both on the initial application zapping out former offenders to hire, but expecting the businessman to hire them. So what we did is our policy reform committee did the research, got all the data, figured out what all we could take to both of those entities to try to get them to change policy. They turned that over to the Policy Reform Committee. Policy Reform Committee grabbed a couple of ex-offenders off the Ex-Offenders Council and marched up to City Hall, told the City Council why they needed to change that policy. For long, they voted immediately almost to change policy. They took that off of the initial application. They only put it in on those few jobs that really were secure necessary. And you know what? As soon as they passed it, 2 weeks later, the county passed the same thing because the county doesn't want to get behind the city, just like your parish doesn't want the city to have done something they haven't already done. And now we have banned the box. Now we can go to the businessman and say, both the county and the city hire former offenders. Can you try this too? Here's the reasons, okay? So that's why the Planning Council needs to have muckety-mucks. We had to have something on that Planning Council that had one of the city council members so that she could get it on the agenda so that we could convince the rest of the city council to ban the box. That's the reason your Planning Council is important. But remember, they're not the most important. The most important is that guy in the community that gave the input at the community forum, because what he said is what guided the committees that then guided the Planning Council. So that's kind of the tiered structure that you want to set your roundtable up. The other thing you want is you do not want to be in anybody's office. Like the sheriff might say, hey, I'll donate this conference room for y'all to have your meeting every week. Or I'll donate an office for your volunteers to come in and do work. No. Why? Somebody tell me why you don't want to do that. You were shaking your head. Why don't you want to do that?
Oh, sorry.
Why would you not want?
They won't think you're neutral. They'll think
That's
you're
right. Exactly. And the truth is, you won't be neutral. You're depending on that sheriff for electricity, for a computer, for a water machine. So yeah, it will keep you. Look, he's leaving because I called him down. I promise I won't ask you to do anything else. So you don't want to be connected in any way with any of your members. I don't care if you just hire a retired teacher to work from her home to kind of do the logistics for your roundtable. Go meet in the church. You can go meet in City Hall in one of their rooms or one of the county rooms, as long as you're not under somebody's office. Okay, because it's not only how it looks, but the reality is there is really a certain bias there that you can't avoid. So, so you say, well, we can't form because we don't have any money. You don't need any money. How many of y'all right now either work in criminal justice somewhere or in human services somewhere, support services somewhere? What do you work in? Where do you work? Yeah, the Apple.
I'm a mentor with Capital. I will be a mentor with Capital.
A mentor
with Capital area.
With Capital area.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're on the support system side, like a service provider, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Services.
Service provider and case management. Patient navigator. Tell us more about it.
Well, I work with formerly incarcerated and HIV-positive individuals, making sure they are linked to care once they are released from jail or prison. We do the ID cards, birth certificates, Social Security cards, anything that enables them to get back on the right track. So we develop our plan.
Anybody here in law enforcement or, okay, law enforcement. So everybody here is somewhere or another connected to reentry. You have an interest in reentry is why you're here. So, how many of y'all had at least one meeting this week? Y'all are telling a fib because you're in a meeting right now. Everybody. Yeah, everybody has a meeting at least once a week, just about, right? Usually a lot more than that. But if you just say one, that's what a roundtable, you only meet once a month. So there's no reason, as part of your job, why should you double dip and be paid to be on the round table, to be on the round table? No reason to. That promotes your job. That helps your job. That makes you a better employee, whether you work for a state agency, a parish agency, whether you work for a nonprofit. That's part of your job is successful reentry. So why shouldn't you have a 1-hour meeting for that? So really, you're all volunteers, but you're getting paid by your real employer, okay? So it doesn't cost anything to develop a roundtable. Now, if you get real smart and you have that support, that evidence-based practice committee that likes to research and do that, usually there's one or two in there that like to write grants. Guess what? They can write your roundtable a grant, then you can hire somebody if you want to. I personally think it's better not to hire anybody. You know, when a person's doing something for passion, there's usually a lot more quality. It's a lot more quality involved. But you may have to get somebody to just help with the logistics part, just because that takes some time. But you don't have to do that right off the bat. Y'all can take turns doing that. And I can guarantee you, once you get that planning council together, those muckety-mucks will find somebody in their office that won't mind setting up the meetings every month, and another one won't mind doing this every month, because they're competitors. They can't let anybody have a one-upsmanship on them. Use that. You getting it? Okay, so now you say, okay, we've established all this, now what? Well, now what means that you check and see if the next region has a round table. And even if there's just 2 or 3 that start off with, think how much stronger your voice is going to be to that legislature with 3 of the 9 regions all saying the same thing. How much stronger are you going to be when there's 3 of those regions that are saying, we need to fix this statewide coalition that we have in law but is not working right? You know, I think every state's like Louisiana and Texas. We had the same problem. We get a law passed that's a really good law and important, but then it's not ever implemented. Or if it is implemented, it's not implemented very well. They throw a few crumbs to just say they followed the law. And so you have to then go back to the legislature and get the implementation part, which is probably what y'all are going to have to do to get your statewide coalition to really running. David was here earlier that's in charge and mandated with getting that thing in better shape, and I don't envy him a bit. And it's like I told the last group, y'all need him because he's the one that's being mandated to make this work, and he needs y'all because obviously the people that are running it really don't want it any different than how it is right now, and they like the money they're getting for it. So y'all really need him, and he needs y'all just to try to accomplish to get that changed. If you can't get it changed, then you have to go to the legislature and say, this is going to the wrong place because they're throwing crumbs and nothing's really happening.
I'm sorry, tell me who David is again.
What's David's last name? He's in the... Cressy. David Cressy.
Who is he associated with?
I don't know who he's associated with, but I know he's the one that they've mandated now to work with. Is it RNC? What is it?
He's working with the State Reentry Alliance Coalition.
Right. And they've mandated that he kind of fix it and somehow get it going. And he's here, and he's in the other room right now doing a presentation. So just look him up, just ask until you find him, because he is really looking forward to having y'all's support to try to change things and vice versa. Like I said, y'all can really help each other. Let's see, what am I forgetting? What time did you say I had to be through? 4 o'clock. That's what I was afraid of. Let me give y'all my email and my phone number, because when you go back to your regions, my suggestion is the first thing you do is try to find at least 1 or 2 muckety-mucks that you think will have a real heart for trying to change, okay? And once again, even to that group, you want to sell it with promoting public safety and saving tax dollars. My name is Jerry, Jeri. Last name is Houchins, Houchins. Think of ouch and put an H in front of it. And then my email is jerijanw@gmail.com. Phone number is 512-662-2005. I just want to end with one thing, and that is to tell you that there's a lot of hurdles. There's a lot of barriers up there. But I can guarantee you, if you will find at least one other person in your region that feels the way you do, or you wouldn't be at this conference today, that you can move a mountain. They're really hungry for this change. Right now, they know they are spending way too much in corrections, okay? But they don't know what to do about it. And if you work in the human service side of it, just know that every single penny you get pulled that they don't need in criminal justice, every single man or woman that spends one night less in jail is $55 more that you have in human services. And if nothing else gets you to keep going, you just keep remembering that. Wow, we say there were 4 people today that, we were able to get diverted that didn't go to prison or that isn't going back, that has been released, and we've been able to help them find housing. One final thing, too, and this is something that I think has been the hardest thing for me. I have a hard time sometimes when something sounds real good because I want to believe it so bad that I buy it without checking to see if it's real, if it's accurate. So you've got to be real careful with that, particularly with reentry. Now everything is evidence-based practice. It's based on evidence. It's not just, what we used to call best practices. It's now evidence-based, and there's a reason for that. And that's because if you can't prove it with data, it didn't ever happen. And there's some real truth to that. You're not going to get people to invest money in something that feels good. It's got to be something that is good, okay? Once again, final thought, and that is market your product. Market it with promoting public safety and saving tax dollars, okay? Thank y'all much.
Got to get a round of applause for Miss Jerry. Her and her husband came a long way just for us here in Louisiana. Thank you very much. May God bless you.